Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone listening in. Welcome, one and all, to this newest edition of the VORW International Podcast, the voice of the report of the week. I suppose you could say this is the early August edition, and boy, I really made that deadline, didn't I? I did such a good job. I think I really am owed a very well-deserved pat on the back for maintaining the deadline that I said I would for this show so well. It's obviously not that I missed it by an entire month and a half or anything like that. I was just I was fashionably late, right? Oh God, I tried, and this is where we ended up. But hey, at least we got the show out, right? Something's better than nothing, I suppose. I mean, you never know. This next what, hour and a half, 2 hours to come could be some of the most abysmal programming one has ever heard, and then in that case, of course, nothing would be ideal. So, well, I suppose I'll find out, and if I start getting email after email from people just saying, "my ears," then I know that I suppose that applies in this case. But I hope this program makes for an enjoyable listen. This is a feature program where we're going to be focusing on one topic for the most part, and that, of course, is the subject of superpowers. So we'll be getting to that in a moment. But first, dear listeners, please turn your attention to the description of this program, or perhaps simply lend an ear. We have some fan art to feature in the program today. First piece of fan art, I would like to give credit to Andy Lyons in California. It says, "I really enjoy your broadcasts and food reviews." It says, "As you might notice, this was inspired by the work of Shepard Fairey." And the second piece of fan art goes out to an anonymous listener I just mentioned as, we'll see. Said, "Listening to the May podcast, I was surprised how little fan art there was for someone so artistically tuned with themselves. And I mean that in the mediums you keep alive via fashion, radio, demeanor, etc. If you don't mind a little rambling, I'm 20 years old, and your videos and reviews have kept my mind calm and provide a level of comfort in the chaos of growing up these past few years. I've always been interested in the world before the internet. I had only gotten to experience it very briefly, and I'm only uncomfortable the further we get from the 20th century. Yeah, I feel ya. I too think it's beautiful in a lot of ways, plus before news outlets only fear-mongered, but you've shown me it's not too late, at least, to dress the way I want. I will say, in the wide range of time, I feel fortunate I was born so close to, let's say, the 80s, and I've ordered my first real vintage Oxford shoes, and I'm looking into dress shirts. Do you have any recommendations, brands you like? Anywho, saying that I was eager to contribute what I can. Thanks for the time." Well, thank you. Anonymous listener there checking in for the second piece of fan art featured in the program. This listener actually submitted another piece of fan art, which I'll be featuring in the program after this one. So your second piece of fan art, which I like very much, I should add, is going to be in the show after this one. So keep tuning in, and your second one will be there. I did just want to mention, though, real quick, about your question, that I understand the sentiment. I mean, I've been there myself. I know what you mean. And as far as any brands and recommendations, what I look at these days is not so much the brand, but more so the fit, if that makes sense. Because a lot of the things that I wear from that era, I find that across the board, the quality is just generally higher. Even if the brands themselves weren't, let's say, luxury quality, I think that the quality in general was merely higher than what you see a lot today. So I look at things more from a fit perspective than anything else. And, you could easily find, like, dress shirts, for instance, even at secondhand stores, that obviously have that certain fit in mind. For instance, like if you're interested in 80s and 90s dress shirts, they're very different from the ones that you see today. A lot of the dress shirts today are much tighter on the skin. And of course, you'll have people that say, oh, it accentuates this, that, and the other thing, blah, blah, blah. I think in many cases it's just, they're being cheap. So the dress shirts from the 80s and 90s, generally speaking, had, a pretty crisp collar. A lot of them were white dress shirts. And definitely had more fabric to them. Wider arms, wider armholes. And when you wear it, even when it's tucked in, you don't necessarily feel like it's pulling on you or anything. There's just plenty of fabric, and it's just plain comfortable to wear, in my opinion. So really, any of the mainstream menswear brands, I'd say, as long as it's from the 80s and 90s, I think you'd be perfectly fine with the style and fit, provided that's what you're looking for. But all I could say is when I went shopping for dress shirts, I could only really ever analyze them just through the fit, and I would have to just sort of, even try them on. Or I could eyeball them in many cases, but it's something I'd have to do physically, and it's just one of those things. It's sort of tough to discern solely looking at pictures. Now, I did want to get to your question, though, because that was a good piece of fan art, and I thought you deserved a good answer for the time, of course, that you spent creating this fan art. And I do want to mention, dear listeners, that if you are feeling artistically inclined and would like to make a piece of fan art that I'll feature in the next program, have fun with it. Any style you'd like. That's what it's all about. Just have fun. And simply send it to me via email, VORWINFO@gmail.com. Let me know how you would like to be credited. It could simply be by name. It could be by an alias, a pseudonym. If there is a social media profile of yours you'd like me to link that has more of your work that could be found there, or a website where more of your work can be found, you can do that. You could just send me the link and I'll shout you out and put it in the description. If you'd like to remain anonymous, that is perfectly fine by me. And if you don't include any sort of name, at least explicitly, I will keep you anonymous simply by default. Better safe than sorry. And likewise, with that mentioned, now lend an ear, as there are a few advertisers and sponsors for this broadcast. Their financial support is very important, and it helps keep this show going, so lend an ear. And if there's anything that seems to be of interest, I sincerely ask of you to support the sponsors of this show. For any real estate agents, builders, or business professionals out there, first impressions matter. Whether you're selling a property, showcasing your work, or marketing yourself, high-quality visuals can make all the difference. And that's where multi-focus media comes in. We create stunning real estate photography, cinematic videos, and professional headshots to help you stand out. We specialize in real estate photography, cinematic walkthrough videos, aerial drone shots, and digital enhancements like virtual staging and floor plans. But we don't stop there. We also work with commercial builders and remodelers, capturing progress photos throughout a construction project and delivering final marketing images that showcase a builder or architect's craftsmanship. Beyond real estate, we also offer professional headshots at our studio in Central Connecticut, perfect for realtors, executives, and business owners who need a polished, professional image. Our clients trust us for next-day delivery, eye-catching visuals, and reliability. Whether you need a full suite of real estate marketing assets, progress documentation for a construction project, or a professional headshot that elevates your personal brand, we make the process seamless and stress-free. Unlike big box media companies, we tailor our services to your needs, giving you the personalized attention and high-quality results that make your listings, projects, and brand stand out. The success stories speak for themselves. One of our real estate clients told us, I listed a home with Multifocus Media's photos and video, and we had multiple offers within 24 hours. A builder we worked with said the progress photos you captured helped us keep our stakeholders updated, and the final images were perfect for our website and marketing materials. That's the power of great visuals. If you're a real estate professional, a commercial builder, or a business owner in Connecticut, let Multifocus Media help you stand out. You can visit their website, www.multifocusmedia.com, see their work, and book your next session. Whether it's a real estate shoot, construction project documentation, or a professional headshot, we make sure you look your best. That again is multifocusmedia.com. Check out the website, see the results for yourself. Multifocus Media, because great visuals don't just capture attention, they create opportunities. Are you a fan of music? Well, good news! Connor Olson is an independent musician here to bring you some great tunes. Inspired by artists such as Sparklehorse, Daniel Johnston, and Eels, Connor's music embraces a lo-fi, rough-around-the-edges aesthetic that is sure to appeal to fans of underground music. Connor also has a new single out now entitled False Horizons, and would like to thank his dog, Clover, for allowing her likeness to be used for the cover image. You can find his music on all major streaming platforms, and be sure to look out for his new album, Persephone, when it releases this Halloween. Again, that's Connor Olson, and make sure you check out that new single of his, False Horizons, available wherever you find your music. Whether you're simply heading out for a weekend of camping or hiking, or are a hardcore prepper getting ready for the apocalypse, if you want to be able to procure food in an emergency, you need the Rule the Wasteland Deluxe Survival Fishing Kit. Available on Amazon and at rulethewasteland.com, this deluxe kit is unlike any other kit on the market, which are all feeble gimmicks and only a few paltry pieces. The Rule the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit is designed with everything you actually need to catch fish in a survival situation, including over 250 feet of fishing line, more than 35 various size hooks, multiple bobbers and lures, and even a mini multi-tool. And everything is packed securely in a watertight aluminum tin that fits in the palm of your hand. Put them in your car kit, bug-out bag, or just throw one in your pocket before heading outdoors. Visit rulethewasteland.com and use the code VORW for 10% off both the deluxe and micro versions, or simply search Amazon for Rule the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit. Again, the website, rulethewasteland.com. That's rulethewasteland.com. Use that code VORW, 10% discount if you use it. Rule the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit, available at the website or on Amazon.com. If you are interested in advertising on this program, you could be promoting your goods, service, you could be promoting your social media pages, your website, your music. As you can see on this program, we promote a wide variety of things from a wide variety of individuals. It's your opportunity to get your message out to a good number of listeners, both nationally and internationally. And it's at a very affordable rate. Again, I do this just as a means to try to supplement some of the radio airtime costs. So you're going to be getting a good bargain deal as far as the reach you would be getting for the amount that would actually cost you to advertise on this program. But as you could see, I do ad reads and these sorts of things, and it's a very simple process. If you'd like more information, send me an email, and as I always say, there's no harm in asking. If it doesn't work out, I hold nothing against you. Don't even worry about that. But if you've even the slightest curiosity, shoot me an email. I always have this little information packet that I send over to anyone who asks. So just inquire, and then if it sounds like it's something that you might be interested in from there, very easy process, very easy to work with, and we'll get an ad all set up for you and sent out for the next show. So simply send in an email if you're curious, VORWINFO@gmail.com, and we'll see what happens. And likewise, if you do want to support this program, you could always send in a donation via PayPal to VORWINFO@gmail.com or via Patreon, patreon.com/The Report of the Week. If you support this program on Patreon, understand that I do my radio show, and in addition to supporting the program there on the Patreon, as a little bit of it's the least I could do to give back, you can access and listen to all my radio broadcasts on demand, anytime, day or night, thousands of hours of extra content there. Again, patreon.com/The Report of the Week. And on the subject of the radio broadcasts, I do want to emphasize 2 points. Number one, as I always say, I do, in addition to this podcast, a radio show. 2 shows a week, every week. Each program is an hour long, and generally for the first half hour or so, I like to discuss the news of the day. I'll break down current events, talk about some of the news behind the news, and just discuss stories generally on the international side of things. I don't really go into the political drivel that dominates the headlines these days, so I try to cover the world news and things going on that really have nothing to do with the political mess and all of that good stuff. So, for instance, like in the most recent show, I was giving updates on the situation between Thailand and Cambodia. That was a dynamic we'd been covering even before it turned into an armed conflict. Been covering that, gave updates on what was going on in Ukraine. We cover a lot of what's going on in the Middle East and Africa and Asia, and I just try to cover more or less international news, things that just you don't really see in the headlines here in the U.S. It doesn't mean that I don't focus on domestic issues, but I just try to have more of an international focus, because a lot of listeners write in, they say, look, if it weren't for you talking about this stuff, I never would have even known. And I enjoy talking about it. I have, an interest in many of these things. I could talk about these conflicts without worrying about getting demonetized or anything. And again, it brings information and awareness to people, and a lot of folks enjoy it. And then I balance out the rest of the show. I try to inform, but also entertain, although I never mix the two. Because then I distinctly balance out the rest of the show by taking and playing some listener music requests. And it makes for a fun, interactive segment. I'll take and play again some requests. I'll usually give some trivia about some of the songs that get played, and then I'll usually give some listener shout-outs as well. So it's a fun show. A lot of listeners like tuning in. And for a broadcast schedule, take a look at the description of this program, or even just you could divert your eyes over to the screen. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see a schedule posted up there as well. And I hope you could catch the show at some point soon. I do have to mention that there has been a reduction. I did have to end one of the broadcasts. The transmission of mine that I had going for many months on 17, 8 to 10 kilohertz, I did have to put an end to it. And I hate that it had to be done. But unfortunately, the money just isn't there to be able to fund it anymore. That's why I go through the whole song and dance as far as even asking for any support. If I didn't need it, I wouldn't ask. And I think one misconception is that with the YouTube, it doesn't pay nearly as much as people would think that it does. And I wish it weren't true. Sadly, it is. But views alone don't determine how much you make. And for instance, views for the channel, have been pretty good. Video to video, with the main channel, that is, been getting anywhere between generally 2 and 300,000 views per video that I do, which is fantastic. But then we have such a thing called CPM. which determines how much you actually make per every 1,000 views. And let me just tell you, the CPM hasn't been all too kind to me these days. And despite the amount of views that I get on the channel being considerably high, the amount that I actually make is lower than I did even a couple years ago, when the views were actually just, even during a slump, maybe 25% of what they are now. And I was making more when I was getting so much less view-wise. It's just the unfortunate reality of things. Nothing I can do to magically change what the CPM is. But like I said, it hasn't been the kindest number to me in the world these days. So the income there is down. And as a result, that broadcast on 17, 8 to 10 kilohertz, it was quite literally breaking the bank, and I couldn't do it. So I had to end it, unfortunately, which I wish I didn't have to do, but like I said, the money just isn't there. If the money was there, I would have that broadcast still going and then some. That's how I do things. So I had to end it. It was just too expensive, and I can't afford it. So that's why I always emphasize the support and all of that. And again, a way you can support it is via the PayPal, the Patreon, but also by advertising. So if any of that sounds of interest, it's up to you. And likewise, if you're interested in getting into the medium of shortwave listening, it's not what it used to be, I will admit that, but there's still lots of good stations out there and things that you can catch, and it's still very important and useful medium in times of disaster and censorship. You name it. It's a good place to find both international programming from state broadcasters, world news and perspective that's tough to find elsewhere, but you could also find some interesting independent programming that I'll just say there is no chance you would ever find it online, even if it's out there, like you would whilst just scanning the dial on the shortwave still. It's also a physical aspect of radio that I think, for some at least, there's something special about it. It's just something more intimate and fun, I suppose, at actually having a physical radio, turning it on. You have the antenna and scanning around through the static and being able to hear my show, for instance, on an actual radio. A lot of listeners, they say, look, I've listened online, but it's just way more fun to actually tune in, on the radio. And there's just something about it that makes it more real, that it's a real signal going out, and there's just something more to it than just streaming it, but being able to hear other stations too. And you could still hear some cool things. I mean, the other day, for instance, I was tuned into NHK World Radio Japan, when there was that tsunami ongoing across the Pacific from that massive earthquake that was off the coast of Russia there. And they were covering the event live, and that made for quite the interesting listen. Recently, there have actually been some new state broadcasts that I've started hearing from Israel, if you'd believe it. Their network, Kan, I believe, Kan, is on shortwave now, with a couple broadcasts in English to North America each day. And, people have their thoughts on Israel, but it's very interesting perspective on what's going on in the Middle East. Very interesting to hear their broadcasts. And also heard some broadcasts from Radio Poland. They seem to be back on air via relay. So being able to hear some news from Poland as well, very interesting English service that they have going. And of course, in addition to that, you could scan around, you could pick up some of the staples like the BBC World Service and China Radio International. But you could also catch some broadcasters like Radio Slovakia, Radio Prague, Radio Exterior de España, RAI Argentina, Radio Romania, Voice of Turkey, just to name a few. So like I said, the medium, it's not what it used to be, but it's not fully dead either. And there's still a diverse variety of broadcasters that you could still pick up even in mid-2025. So I don't know how long it's going to be this way. It's hung on in some ways longer than I thought it would. And it's died in some ways quicker than it would, but in the end, there's still stuff on the air. So if you get a radio, you'll still be able to use it, and you could use it effectively and have a lot of fun. but I don't know how long it's going to stay this way. But if you want to get into the medium of shortwave, I say now or never. I'll be happy to help you out, so if you want any radio suggestions or recommendations, or if you're having any trouble and you want some reception help or advice, just send me an email, VORWINFO@gmail.com, and I will be happy to help you out there. This broadcast is brought to you by the Wieners and Losers 1980s Classic Arcade Museum and 1980s themed Airbnb. Are you ready to time travel? No DeLorean required? Introducing the ultimate 1980s themed Airbnb, where every stay feels like stepping into a rad John Hughes movie, minus the teenage angst. Located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, this totally gnarly getaway features an authentic 80s-themed bedroom with 2 comfy twin beds, a 1986 Magnavox stereo stocked with vinyl and cassettes, a TV with a huge collection of VHS tapes and DVDs, 2 retro couches where you can play any video game console ever made, from classics up to CD-based systems. You'll also have your own private entrance, kitchen, bathroom with a shower. And here's the kicker. You get access to the Wieners and Losers 1980s Classic Arcade Museum, the largest private collection of working bronze and golden age arcade games on the East Coast. Whether you're planning a throwback birthday bash, a killer couples weekend, or just want to unplug and watch The Breakfast Club the way it was meant to be, this 80s-themed Airbnb and arcade near downtown Winston-Salem, North Carolina, is your tubular ticket to the past. Search 80s-themed arcade on Airbnb.com to book now. That's 80s-themed arcade on Airbnb.com. And if you're just looking to host a party or event, the Wieners and Losers 1980s Classic Arcade Museum is also available separately. You could also check it out at facebook.com/Wieners and Losers. That's facebook.com/WIENERSANDLOSERS. facebook.com/Wieners and Losers. If you're looking for something fresh and unique, this broadcast is brought to you by independent musician Liam Stark, who recently released his album, Home. Home was recorded at the Blue Moon Theater in Woodstown, New Jersey, with the help of fellow artists John Piano and Landon Axel. You can stream or purchase the album on major platforms. Just look up Liam Stark, Home, wherever you get your music. And if you'd like a physical copy, Liam is giving away CDs to the first 25 people who sign up for his Patreon at patreon.com/Liam Stark. That's LIAMSTARK. Again, if you're a fan of independent music and want to support an artist doing things his own way, check it out. That's Home by Liam Stark. Available now. Alright, so with everything now, all of the basics as per usual, out of the way, into the show itself, I do want to just say a few words on a miscellaneous note that I think it just needs to be said. I don't really want to say too much in this regard, but number one, I'm going to try to keep a good temperament in today's program, keep my head up as best I can. Admittedly, it's not the happiest day in the world for me. As we know, life can be, it comes with its surprises, both good and bad. There was an unfortunate surprise that happened this week. Like I said, not to say too much, but a close family friend passed away, and it was very unexpected, and it was something that pretty much just blindsided me and everyone else, and it came out of nowhere. It happened far too soon. And that's just, I think, understandably, just been bothering me. He was a good man, good heart. I think you hear this a lot, but someone that truly didn't deserve this fate. Someone that I've known and fondly remembered my entire life, and someone who will most certainly be missed. I just needed to say that, and of course those of you who have dealt with loss, you all understand. And it's just the way life is, it's how variable it can be. And, isn't this the way that it goes a lot of the time? I know there are those instances when it comes down to the loss, be that of friends, family, loved ones, etc., where, there is that sort of gradual decline, and for lack of a better word, you can kind of see it coming, and you can prepare. That's not to say that it makes it any better or any easier. It's like, okay, yes, you understand that it's an inevitability, but it still doesn't change the fact that what's going to happen is going to happen. And it still doesn't necessarily make it any easier, right? That's the thing. I think that sometimes in media it always portrays it as being something that it's not, that it's just some... Because it tries to portray it, of course, in the idyllic manner that everyone would like it to be in. And there gets to be that sense of closure, and everyone's all gathered round, and it all, it's just a peaceful transition, and all of that. But, there's a difference between the Hollywood version of death and then what really happens. And yeah, sometimes, it does happen that way. But then there are other instances where just a week ago, everything's 100% normal, and then something just happens out of the blue, and then the next thing you know, everything's changed, and it's the last thing you ever could have seen coming, where you think, wait a minute, how just a week ago everything was totally normal, and now you're telling me a week later this person's gone? That's always the worst. And life is unpredictable. And there's no answer, there's no solution to any of that, to the unpredictability of life, because it's unpredictable for a reason. And it always will be. You can't sit there and expect the unexpected, because it's going to be unexpected. It's not going to be something that you've just been sitting there planning for, or anything like that, or anticipating. That's the whole thing. And it's just the way that life is, for better or for worse. But I guess, to me, and again, like I said, for folks who have dealt with loss, especially when it's in these times where there's no warning whatsoever, it's surreal to imagine, in a sense, where it's like, this is over now. You're never going to see or hear from this person again. Just like that. And, you still doesn't feel real right away. And I guess I'm still in that sort of phase of processing it, but I know that this whole talk is a bit of a downer. I've given this lecture pretty much word for word in the past, and it's one of those things, not that it will fall on deaf ears, because it won't, but it's one of those things that as far as actually putting it into practice, it is far easier said than done. As a matter of fact, I would be willing to submit that actually applying this in the truest sense of the word is more of an impossibility than anything else. But even just trying a little bit can perhaps make a world of difference. I say that there will always be regrets. There will always be things that you wish you could have said or done, no matter what, no matter the situation, no matter how much time or preparation you've had, there is always going to be that, and that's just the way it is. But understanding how life can be, just from time to time, make sure you just let the folks in your life know, like I said, whether they're family, friends, loved ones, whoever, let them know that they're appreciated, even if it's just from time to time. Because you never know. You never know how life will play out. This is one of those situations where, if you asked me a week ago, I would have said, oh yeah, this guy would have been around for, a good 20 more years, easily. And then a week later, where are we, right? You don't see it coming. And when you do, it's already behind you, and it's already too late. Like I said, there's always going to be those regrets and those things that you say, well, I wish I could have said or done this, that, and the other thing, but just throwing that out there. I think it needs to be said. And like I said, I've given this lecture a good many times, word for word. Do I practice what I preach? I try to, but do I do it fully as much as, would make it sound when I do this? No. Because we're only human. There's only so much that we can do. But to at least try could make more of a difference than you would ever think, I believe anyway. Truly do. Like I said, I know this isn't the happiest lecture in the world, but it was one that I think needed to be said. And something I just wanted to get out there. Alright, with that said, dear listeners, today's program is going to be focusing on the discussion of a question that we asked in the previous program. And I would like to thank you all sincerely, those of you who submitted your listener responses to the question. There was a fantastic variety of responses, and a remarkable diversity in answers, which is exactly what I was hoping for. So, the question that I asked that we will be discussing was in relation to the concept of superpowers. And essentially, I wanted to ask like a fun hypothetical question where it's like you don't have to really focus on reality and the laws of physics or any of this stuff. It's just like one of those questions where I say have fun with it. And therein I asked, if you could have any superpower, right, and it could be any sort of remarkable ability, anything, for 24 hours, so just for a 24-hour span, what would it be and how would you use it? And again, it could be any ability, I wasn't looking for realism or anything. I wanted you to have fun with it and answer it any way you wanted to. And thankfully, we got a lot of good, really cool answers. So this is going to be a good show, and this is one of those instances where it's like almost every answer is wildly different from the next. And that was exactly what I was hoping for when I asked the question, and I think it worked out so well. I'm very happy about that. Now, going forward, the next program that I do, we're going to go back to a mailbag show. That's sort of how I plan on doing this, where we're going to rotate things, so one program will be a directed question where there's a specific prompt, and then the show after that is just going to be random mailbag. So the next show that I do is going to be a mailbag show. This is your chance. What the mailbag essentially is, if you have any thoughts, any feedback, any comments, any questions for me, and they could be related to anything. It doesn't have to be strictly about this, that, or the other thing. If you want to ask me about shoes or suits or technology or the weather or a current event, or if you want to ask me about aspects related to YouTube, or if you want to talk to me about aliens or anything, anything under the sun, that's your chance to do it. So if you have any questions, any topic suggestions, anything you'd like me to talk about, if there's anything that you would like to share with both me and the viewing audience at large, this gives you a platform. If there's anything interesting that you came across or researched or found out, or that you just want to talk about, this is your platform to be able to do it. Really, it's just an open slate, and all you have to do is send me an email. I will mark it down, and then in the next show, we'll just go through them, read and respond to them, answer whatever questions there are, talk about whatever there is to talk about, and give you a platform to talk about whatever you want to talk about if you so choose. So, it's going to be a random show. It only works, though, understand, if you write in and send me an email with your questions, comments, points, etc. It could be long or short, so don't think that there's any sort of restriction. And like I said, though, this only works if you actually write in. If there's no emails, it defeats the entire purpose of such a program, and it's impossible, of course, to do. So it'd be great to hear from you. Please consider sending in an email, VORWINFO@gmail.com. That's VORWINFO@gmail.com. That's the way to do it, and I hope to hear from you soon. Now with that, let's open up the email and see what we have as far as the Superpower responses are concerned. So first and foremost, on the subject of superpowers, some people were wondering what would my response be as far as a 24-hour period. What ability would I choose? And this might sound silly. I would simply choose the power of invisibility. As far as my priorities in life are concerned, I don't need to rule the world or this, that, or the other thing. I don't need to fly around or any of that. I would simply choose invisibility, and I would just like to be able to go out and about and be able to do what I've wanted to do for years, and finally be able to do it. Just be able to go out and about and have a fun, active day, do some sightseeing, and visit the places that I can't really enjoy anymore, because, of how people sort of react. And I would just like to be invisible and finally be able to do that again without having to ever worry about any of this stuff. So I would choose invisibility, and like I said, just utilize that to be able to go out and have more of an extroverted day, to an extent, of course carefully, because I'd be invisible, and just be able to enjoy some things that aren't too enjoyable otherwise, that I sort of wish I could have done. So that's what I would choose, invisibility, just for that simple reason. Now on to the responses. First one up comes in from Toby, who says, "Thanks for another podcast. If I could have any superpower for a single day, I would choose teleportation. Using teleportation, I would visit countries that I would otherwise not visit due to safety issues. I think the top of my list would be North Korea, Gaza Strip, Myanmar, and Russia. Theoretically, if I got into a dangerous situation, I would just teleport out of there. If not, I could spend 6 hours in each area, teleporting around just to see what it was like with my own eyes. Something about tyrannical governments and/or dangerous countries fascinates me. Sometimes find myself watching videos from people who have the courage to travel to these places. Videos don't give you access to all 5 senses, though, so I would want to experience it in person. It is really interesting to see how people live around the world, and it gives you an appreciation of our boring lives we live here in first world countries. Maybe it's an odd answer, but I think it's what I'd go with. Hope you're staying cool in the Florida heat. We are experiencing similar weather here in Iowa. Have a good one from Toby. Toby, thanks for checking in. I hope you're staying cool. I am indeed. The air conditioner down here is getting a workout, but it's holding strong and doing a good, reliable job despite the heat. And I think that's a cool answer, I should say, teleportation, and I understand why. Being able to go to these locations that would prove too dangerous to be able to do so otherwise. And I know what you mean as far as watching, videos of, these, extreme traveling. And even then, like you said, it doesn't fully show you the whole picture, because there are some parts of these countries that even these extreme traveling people, if they went into, they probably wouldn't leave alive. So absolutely, I've watched videos of some of these traveling, folks. There was one guy that even went to Haiti not too long ago, and they're in the midst of practically a civil war between what minuscule government exists and the gangs, and this guy actually went into parts of Port-au-Prince, and yeah, it was a war zone there. And you could hear the gunfire in the background and everything. And there was another instance, I watched a video where a guy went to South Sudan, which is another place that's extremely dangerous and war-torn. People who have traveled to Yemen as well. And, I understand. It's because it's just so quite literally foreign to all of us. It's a place that most people will never be and could never safely be. And yeah, the fact of the matter is, it's just the way of things. If you went there as a Western tourist, you're going to have a target on your back, either as just, some extremist group that would just want you dead, or some sort of gang or group that sees the dollar signs and might even think we could kidnap this person for a ransom and make a ton of money. And it's, it's just the sad reality of things. So there's a lot of places where it's just not safe to be. And, you see the videos on the news, but that could only show you so much. I understand. I get it. Teleportation. Thank you, Toby, for sharing your response. Next we hear from Matt in Savannah, Georgia, who writes, "You mentioned it when you announced this question, but I already knew that my superpower would be the ability to read people's thoughts. I would not be so interested in hearing the thoughts of people I know, or using this power for financial gain either, but mainly just to gather the data about what people in general really think about me. To that end, I would go to a crowded city center and just for one day only hear the brutal truth. This has always been a problem for me, and I assume for others too, because while I understand why it's considered polite to have a filter and self-censor so as not to offend people, the human obsession with avoiding awkwardness at all costs also means you can go years, decades, or even your entire life without ever knowing how others really see you, and being able to fix things about yourself if they rub people the wrong way. Thank you from Matt in Savannah, Georgia." Wow, that's certainly a bold approach right there, to just go in simply to see what people were really thinking. And, obviously going in, it would, the results would either be, I think, unexpectedly positive, or it would really hurt. Though, and this is just my 2 cents, I think that in some cases, there's a lot of people that just are the way that they are, that even if there's something that you think might rub people the wrong way, there's nothing that can be done about it, because it comes down actually to how these individuals are themselves. And, if it's not one thing, it'll just be something else, and so on. And, there's nothing you'd really be able to do. But, that's certainly a bold approach, like I said. And, you quite literally would probably hear it all. Next we hear from Willow in Florida, who says, "Thank you for responding to my last email. Not sure if you remember, but in my last email I said I was going to a concert in a couple weeks. I want to say I had an amazing time, and while I wasn't in the mosh pit for very long, it was simultaneously the most terrifying and exciting thing I've ever experienced. I was essentially a human pinball. I could understand why you wouldn't find concerts appealing, though. As someone who also gets frequent headaches, the loud noises and flashing lights can be very overstimulating, but I end up having a fun time in the end. But anyway, to answer the prompt you gave in the last episode, if I had to choose a superpower to have for 24 hours, I would want the ability to talk to animals. I have 3 cats, 1 dog, and a crested gecko, so this power would definitely be useful to me. I would ask them if they're happy with their lives, if there's anything I could do to make their lives even better. But out of all my pets, I would talk to my cat, Milky Way, the most. He was the first cat we adopted, and he's been my best friend throughout all my teenage years. He follows me pretty much everywhere, and can be rather talkative at times. Seems like he would be a fun guy to have a conversation with if we could speak English. Looking forward to the next VORW episode. Sincerely, Willow in Florida. Willow, thank you. Happy to hear that you enjoyed the concert, by the way, because I do remember your email, and I remember you expressing, that apprehension, but I'm glad that it worked out well. And, despite perhaps the fears, as far as the unpredictability of the whole thing is concerned, I'm glad you had a fun time at the end of the day. And that makes me happy to hear that you had a good time and that everything went well. And being able to talk to animals, I think that's a cool ability too. And I think a lot of people would be interested, especially those who have pets. In your case, of course, many a pet. To wonder what's on their mind, right? What do they have to say? Are they happy? Are they content? And so on. I bet that could definitely be quite the interesting experience, and especially being able to talk to, of course, the cat there that's pretty much like your best buddy, that always follows you around and can be talkative and the like. I'm sure that could be fun. Willow, it's good to hear from you. Next email comes in from an anonymous listener, and this is has nothing to do with superpowers. I guess it's just got in the folder. This is a unique proposition. This listener writes, "Can you please make a video of you visiting a tank museum and reviewing the tanks based on something like their history, practicability, and last but not least, looks? Please?" So I think that would be a new one right there, to go to a tank museum and review the various tanks and armored vehicles. In all seriousness, I wouldn't mind going to a tank museum. I would appreciate the history of the vehicles, and I think it would be fun to see them and everything. Though I think it would be one of those instances where, at least for me, it would probably be best to have a good tour guide, that really knows the history, so I could truly appreciate everything that I'd be seeing. But at the same time, despite your suggestion, I don't know if I would be the right person for the job as far as reviewing these go, because mind you, while I could certainly offer my opinions on the various tanks that I would be seeing, I wouldn't necessarily say that I have the experience under my belt to be able to review a tank, right? I mean, I don't know who those would really be, who would benefit from a tank review in the serious context. I guess, various governments and militaries and maybe some arms dealers out there. They might appreciate a tank review. But at the same time, I would not consider myself to be a trusted source as far as giving some sort of review on a tank is concerned. Like, for instance, if I were... Alright, let's just say I was an arms dealer, and I was going to be working, with some sort of insurgent group, in Africa. Let's say that I was going to be working with the Sudanese RSF, and they needed armored vehicles, for the civil war that's going on there. number one, I would think, I would already know the best things that would be suitable for that. But secondly, if for some reason I didn't, and I thought, oh, all right, let me just look up some tank reviews on YouTube, and then here I find this video from this guy Rebroadcast, who the video before the tank review is him reviewing some burrito slop from Taco Bell, and now here he is giving some reviews for tanks. I would be thinking to myself, number one, I would be in disbelief. I would think, is this even real? Is this like some performance art? But secondly, what are the qualifications? This guy was reviewing a burrito before, and now he's supposed to be telling me what I need to know about tanks? So I think a review would be going a bit too far, but I think if I were to, I could certainly give my thoughts. I could say, I think this is a cool one, I think it has some interesting history, I like the way that it looks, but like I said, I'm not qualified to really say much more than that. Anything beyond that. I think a tank review would need to be done by either, a soldier, or I would be willing to say more so, an officer, of decent rank that, perhaps commanded various armored divisions, from one military or another, or some sort of very talented and skilled military historian, right? Those are the types of people I would want to see reviewing tanks, not me. I would certainly give my thoughts, but I wouldn't use it in the serious context. I will say, though, it's an interesting idea, and out of curiosity, I'm just going to ask the question. I don't know if you're listening or if you'll get back, but for the heck of it, you seem to have an interest in tanks and armored vehicles, so I have two questions for you, and again, it's up to you if you even want to respond to this or not. But number one, what is your favorite tank? And secondly, if there was a tank museum you would recommend I visit, which one would it be? So if you hear that, I'm curious, let me know. But there you have it. Well, we discussed recently about being able to communicate with animals. This is on a similar note, although there are some differences here, some stark differences, as a matter of fact. Sam from North Carolina writes, I recently found your radio show and find myself enjoying it. As for the question in the topic of any superpower, I would have to say I would want to become a cat. Oh, the life that is a cat. You can go outside into wherever you want, sleep all day long in the sun and not have a care or any worries. Just simply being a cat. Also, my food would be taken care of because humans love feeding stray cats, and there is simply no shortage of food around. Preferably, I would choose to be an orange cat. Orange is a spectrum of color that lots of prey animals can't see, therefore hunting would be easier. Also, I could blend in with the grass or leaves. I'd like to imagine my typical day would be spent finding the absolute most precise location that would get the most sunlight. Then, at night, I would spend my time running free with the other cats doing parkour off of people's rooftops, as they tend to do. Unfortunately, that is merely a dream. Have a great day from Sam in North Carolina, although Sam signs off with Cat Wannabe, which I think is a very appropriate sign-off right there. That is an interesting ability, and like I was saying, this is a message I think that speaks for itself. So you wouldn't just want to be, to be able to communicate with animals. You would actually just want to be the physical cat for a day. And in this hypothetical, you would be, right, an orange cat. You would have the full control over it. So yes, you would be that perfect shade of orange that, you would have wanted to have been. And, see what it's like. And I'd have to assume that the outcome perhaps would be one of two things. I think it would either be A, this is literally perfect, this is everything I dreamed of and more, or B, it might be something to the extent of, well, this is a bit more boring than I would have expected. Although I would have to wager, especially if it's for a day, I don't really think there'd be any boredom there. I think it would be just so fascinating, right, that it would just it would probably fly by. Greg in Ottawa, Canada says, if I had a superpower for 24 hours, it would be super intelligence. I would have a 24-hour hackathon to invent something brilliant and write myself a business plan to market, manufacture, and sell it. After the superintelligence expires, I would just follow my business plan and eventually live off the riches. Cheers, from Greg in Ottawa, Canada. Greg, thanks for writing in. Just remember that if you do follow this, you have to take into account various fallbacks and what-ifs. Now, if you had the superintelligence, you would be able to, but just make sure when you do get that you do factor in, just contingency measures just in case. So that way, you'll have, be that a plan B or a plan C, or, you could address various what-ifs in an effective manner, just in case, right? So just make sure, you're thorough as far as that's concerned, and, that way then it'll be sort of foolproof, right? And once you rake in the big bucks, don't forget who suggested that advice to you, okay? I kid. Greg, thanks for writing in. We hear from Brady, who says, if I could choose any superpower, it would definitely be time travel. I would love traveling back in time to good periods in my life, years that I don't remember or years I didn't get to experience. This power could also be useful in stressful situations or times of struggle, as I could have time traveled past those periods in my life. If I made a mistake, I could go back and correct it. So many things I can think of that this power could be useful for. Been loving the questions. Keep up the good work, from Brady. Thanks, Brady. Yeah, I could easily see that power being one that definitely has immense appeal. As far as going back, right? Wanting to right any wrongs, correct any mistakes, or being able to say, you know what? This moment is horrible. I hate every second of it. Like one of those things where it's like, oh, I just want this day to end. Well, okay, now it can. And then that's that. Brett checks in, says, I'm from the north of Chicago, long-time listener, big fan of what you do. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to write in. If I could have any superpower, I would want the ability to heal people of their pain. Any type of pain, whether it is mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual. To me, what would make a superpower great is the joy people could get from it. Its value comes from the goodness it can provide. While flying or invisibility might truly be incredible, I can't think of anything that would be better than watching the look on people's faces as they finally release the demons of pain and suffering they may have to carry. I know from my own pain and the pain of others who have shared it with me that we all carry a lot of suffering in our lives, even if things seem alright on the outside. But I guess it raises the question of whether or not getting rid of that pain would be a good thing. Pain can be transformative, and there is meaning in pain. It can become part of what defines us and inspires us to greater heights, but it could also poison us and destroy us from the inside. I've seen both happen to good people as a result of their suffering, and I'm sure you have as well. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Thanks for providing a space for this sort of conversation. Be well, from Brett, again, north of Chicago, checking in. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, it's a really interesting response, and it's fascinating as well, the thoughts that, you included with it. And I think it's one of those things that's really circumstantial, right? I think it could go either way. I would imagine in many cases the result would be largely beneficial, but I imagine that there are some instances where, again, the pain may have been transformative in a sense, like you mentioned, And then, the result of fully removing that could be a little different. So I think it really does depend just case by case. John from Rendon, Texas says, if I could have a superpower for a day, I would have the ability to see the future. Personally, I would use this ability to plan out the rest of my life. I don't care if it will make everything boring, always knowing what will happen, because I will get to live my best life, and therefore give me things to look forward to, and things to prepare for. For everyone else, I would bring back the information on what it would take to download a human brain into a computer. Then we can all live in a world where we have superpowers all the time. John from Rendon, Texas, checking in. It's an interesting combination of the two, being able to look, into the future to, of course, be able to see essentially your own life, right? What choices to make, etc. But then also to look into the future, with a hopeful view, as far as future technology, advanced technology, that is concerned, and then try to bring some of those principles back to today, and, use that for the sake of innovation to try to make things a bit better for everyone. Interesting approach. Alice checks in, says, "G'day, John, and everyone listening to the podcast. I would like to have the ability to control the world's thought process. For just one day, imagine if the whole world based their thoughts and actions in a truly selfless manner, to put other people's needs first instead of themselves. What a positive impact it would have. Thank you again for the amazing effort you put into VORW and the radio programs. I'm currently camping in the outback of Australia, and being able to listen to your podcasts and the radio broadcasts when I'm in no reception has been fantastic. Best wishes from Alice." That's a very interesting answer, Alice. Really a fascinating one. What I would be interested in most, and this is obviously hypothetical, right? We never would really know, but what would happen right after that 24-hour period? Would there be long-lasting, definitive change where it's like, this initial 24-hour span would have therefore gotten the ball rolling into something greater? Or will it just immediately revert back to the same old, same old? And I don't really have an answer. I think it could probably, granted, I'm not the most optimistic person, so I think in many cases it would probably just revert back. However, there could be pleasant surprises there. So, it makes you think. And, yeah, you never know. I would be fascinated, though, to think, what if, right? What if and what would the fallout be from such a thing? And in that 24-hour span, though, I imagine the world certainly would be a bit of a better and safer place for all. So, that's a fascinating one. Thank you so much, Alice, for checking in and submitting that. Next up, we have Nick in Ontario, Canada, says, "I'm a long-time listener and occasional writer in." Says, "I've written in a few times. Your last prediction show was one of them, and I got my prediction pretty damn wrong." Hey, you gave it your shot, right, Nick? No harm in that. Getting back to your email. As for a superpower, I would pick the ability to influence probability for 24 hours. So it would go something like this. I buy a lottery ticket. I think, what is the probability that this ticket is going to be the winning ticket? I then use the superpower to make it 100%. I would assume that even after 24 hours, because I set the probability at 100% for the numbers that I picked, I would still win. But let's theorize that's not the case, and in that particular case, the probability resets to normal after 24 hours. So, alternatively, I go into my backyard, I say, well, what is the probability I'm going to dig a hole down 1 meter and find $1 billion worth of gold buried? I set it at 100%, dig up $1 billion worth of gold. This power could be heavily abused, like asking what the probability is of a certain person doing a certain thing. Say it were to be used to get a girlfriend, and then the 24 hours pass. I would always wonder whether or not it's genuine, and that would feel pretty creepy. Past that, after the 24 hours, I would assume that whatever that person was going to do before I started altering probability would probably not go in my favor anyway, so I would at least hope that I would stay away from things like that. This would be an extreme temptation in creating power. On the other hand, I could also say, what is the probability of particular wars in the world ending right now? That could be turned up to 100, and theoretically peace would be attained for at least 24 hours. I could potentially put that further down the line by saying, what is the chance that the next 1,000 years has world peace? And I could put that to 100, and theoretically it would stick after the 24 hours, assuming the effects stay after being set, like with the lottery dilemma. I'd probably put the probability at 100% that I wake up and my car is full of gas and has nothing wrong with it as well. I would wager this power, I think, is arguably the most powerful and overpowered one you could possibly pick for the challenge. Well, what is the probability that if I jump off this tower I could fly? Well, it's 100. What is the probability that if I weave Naruto ninja hand signs, I'm able to do jujitsu? 100. I think you get the idea. What is the probability of Review Bra making public the early lecture videos following the explanation of what shoes are? 100. Assuming I spend entire 24 hours setting probability, I could alter the entire world, if not the entire universe, completely and theoretically permanently, even after the 24 hours runs out if I run the probabilities correctly. Thank you, this was a good topic. Nick, in Ontario, Canada. Yeah, it's a good answer, Nick, and I would be willing to wager that is one of the most powerful abilities you could have. It's one of those things that at a glance, and I'm just speaking purely right as far as just hearing what it is, might sound underwhelming, but then the more that you think about it, the more that you realize it's essentially bestowing godlike abilities to you. Because you therefore could set the parameters essentially to anything and get anything from it. This is another random email, comes in from JD, who says, I just wanted to check in with a Steak and Shake update over here in Southern California. The last couple times I had Steak and Shake was back in 2017, when they had a location down in Santa Monica. Just like you, I also remembered the burgers being served as the highest quality and just downright delicious. However, due to COVID, it began to struggle financially and was forced to shut down in 2020. This was around the time when you shared your Steak and Shake horror story on the podcast. After hearing the series of events from that episode, I assumed all the remaining locations had fallen down to McDonald's-esque quality. Fortunately, I'm happy to say that I tried it again the other day, after so many years, near Joshua Tree, California. And I take back all my personal misconceptions and doubts on the few locations still thriving in California. Service was phenomenal, the food quality was fantastic. Have you had it since that infamous night? Looking forward to the next time I'm nearby one again. Keep up the great work on YouTube and the radio show from JD. JD, thanks for the check-in. An interesting Steak and Shake update right there. And I haven't heard, I haven't had the ability to try them again. And I don't really want to be honest. However, it's an interesting update you offer. That things, at least in your neck of the woods, seem to have changed for the better. Now, I have heard that Steak and Shake, this is mostly like online. I'm not sure if they're rumors or if it's actually real, that Steak and Shake is one of the chains that's really been closely abiding by and following the advice of RFK Jr. and sort of the Make America Healthy Again attitude. I've read that anyway. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't know how much of that is just like marketing and how much of that even is on the lines of fan fiction and how much of it is real. But I do know I've seen stuff like that, saying that they're like one of the biggest chains sort of going all in on the recommendations of RFK. And I know people have been giving them praise for that. But I haven't tried them out, so I can't really comment one way or another if they've gotten any better or worse here. However, let's look, and let's just see for the fun of it. So there still are numerous Steak and Shakes nearby. I want to look for recent reviews of especially the one that I had that horror story with a couple years back. And we got to find the recent reviews. That's all that matters. So let's see. I want to make sure I have the right one. This is weird. This one, they got a 1 star, and I think this person just doesn't really get the rating system, because this seems to be like an outstanding review. I think they thought that 1 star is the best, and really it's 5 stars. Because this person, and see, this sort of goes along with like the Make America Healthy thing. It says, I love the food here because of the beef tallow, which is more healthy than the seed oils. It says, I come here way too much. And but then gave it a 1 star review. I think this person was meaning to give it like a 5 star rating. This review just says not bad. Gave it 3 stars. 1 star rating. Longest wait. They never serve you. Have fun staring at the menu for hours on end. That's what I experienced back in 2020. Conversely, this is a 5 star rating. This is actually kind of amusing. It says, I love steak and... What does this say? I love steak and shake. Steak and shake has me in such a chokehold that I can't stop eating it. But every time I go here, my order is wrong. I literally just ordered delivery, and I only ordered 2 burgers, and they missing 1 whole burger. Smack my head. Ugh. But that's a 5 star review, and I read it verbatim, literally how it's spelled out. But that's a 5 star review right there. So there you go. The reviews are all over the place. Okay, this one's good. It mostly just says the place is very clean and tidy. Okay, that's important. That's what I want to see. 5 stars. Food was fresh, but there are no servers anymore. Now you manually place the order, pick it up yourself, and they still expect you for a tip. I don't mind tipping, but you need to earn that tip. Besides, the food and shakes were on point. All that's there is the kitchen staff. Wow. So that's a 5 star rating, but there's no staff. Just like some guy in the kitchen, and that's it. And you have to essentially put in the order and pick it up. Wow, that's... Yeah, that could be a big issue right there. Anything else? Let's see. This was a 1 star review. They lose a star right off the bat by offering only kiosk ordering. To further complicate things, they have a stupid system where you have to scan your receipt every time you want a drink. Anything that complicates my life as a customer is points taken away. They take a very long time for our food to be served, and our order is always wrong. I won't be going back because of the customer unfriendly systems in place. Right, it seems like some people are upset about that, understandably so. Service sucks here. The workers here are rude and not very helpful. They ignore the customers, do their own thing. The line gets very long and they just stand there laughing and talking. It's a 1-star review. I'd give no stars if I could. Food sucked, service is awful, and all they do is argue with you about the food you ordered. The manager is a joke in a blue shirt. Honestly, I'd choose any other Steak and Shake. Please leave. It was a 1-star review. And then, flip side of the coin, 5 stars. They do everything kindly when giving out the food and make sure everything's okay and are very helpful when needed. The fries are so good. Maybe it comes down to just who's on shift there. And the most recent review reminds me of how it was in 2020. So it seems like 5 years. This is like the same stuff. We went to the drive-thru tonight, had my meal messed up twice, and had to go inside, get it replaced both times. I asked the man working what was going on, and he just smiled at me. There were 5 other people who had messed up orders as well, waiting way too long for a quick service meal. And after the second time, when I got back to my car and checked, they still didn't have it right. Yeah, that reminds me of how it was again back in 2020. It looks like the Steak and Shakes over here still have their problems, and it looks like some people really like it, but a lot of the reviews seem to be mixed at best, I would say. It's interesting, though. Interesting question. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, this one... This response is definitely unique. I don't think you're going to be seeing this one anywhere else. Big Mike checks in, says, "My superpower would be the ability to transform into a file cabinet at any given time. The obvious purpose of this would be to make myself inconspicuous to others. In the context of superpowers, this would be helpful when hiding from villains or gaining information without being detected, or when you just want to get away from everyone and just be left alone because really, who would suspect the file cabinet? Another feature, and I hope this isn't breaking the rule of only one superpower, is that in file cabinet mode, and as a file cabinet, I'd be completely made out of vibranium and adamantium. You may ask, why not just make yourself invisible? Well, as a file cabinet, you're still present and being made aware of by others, but not just as yourself. And why a file cabinet? Well, let's just say I like the bizarre thought of it. Best regards from Big Mike. Big Mike, thanks for checking in. I like that one. So it's such a unique answer that I would have to say you're the only person that came up with something like that. I like the thought of it, admittedly. I just, imagine, that you got in some sort of trouble, and you've got some gang of guys chasing you through a field, and for a split second they lose sight of you, and you take that opportunity to just transform into a filing cabinet, and then they stumble across this filing cabinet in the middle of just some random remote field, and yeah, I don't think they would do any harm. They would be more bewildered, be like, what on earth is this thing doing here, of all places? And they'd be more confused than anything else, but then I think they just keep looking, and, because whoever suspects the filing cabinet of anything, right? It's just a filing cabinet. I like it. It's a good answer. Next up, we hear from Aaron in Utah. Says, I hope you're doing well. And thank you, as always, for the time, energy, and care you put into the show. I appreciated your recent question about superpowers. Found myself thinking about it more than I expected to. If I could have any superpower, it wouldn't be flight or invisibility or super strength. Instead, I'd choose the ability to slip into an alternate version of Earth, identical in every way to our own, except for one key difference. I'd be the only one there. The buildings, streets, mountains, oceans, all the same, but no people, no noise, no pressure to interact or respond, just solitude. Peace. I suppose it might sound lonely to some, but as an introvert, I find that kind of space absolutely wonderful. Essential, even. Maybe it's pride, or maybe it's a kind of acceptance, but I genuinely enjoy my own company. I think more clearly, feel more grounded, can breathe a little easier when I have room to be alone and just wander with my thoughts for company. In that empty earth, I imagine I'd take long walks down the middle of the quiet city streets, and maybe race my car down the freeway because I could. Maybe stop by a favorite coffee shop, not to be served, of course, but to brew my own cup. I do make excellent coffee, if I may say so. Perhaps I'd visit the library, wander the aisles, pull a book or two from the shelves, read uninterrupted for hours. Everything would move at a gingerly pace, nothing urgent, nothing rushed. Then, when I felt restored, when the mental fog had lifted and my inner world had quieted, I'd return to this version of Earth, none the worse for wear. No one would ever know I'd been gone. That's the superpower I'd want, not for glory or grand feats, but just a quiet sanctuary I could visit when the world gets too loud. All the best to you, Aaron from Utah. Well said, Aaron. Yeah, I'm with you on that. This world, and the fact that you put the thought into it, obviously, and it's like there's a contingency plan in place where it's like you have the ability to immediately return back the second you want. That's, of course, essential. But yeah, to be able to enjoy the peace and quiet and solitude that's nearly extinct from today's world, I could certainly see the appeal in that, obviously. And I like the way you described it, too. You just have free run of the place, and you just get to finally... You're quite literally just taking a break from it all, and using it as an opportunity to essentially just recharge, and I get it, absolutely. It's a good email, Aaron. Thanks for checking in. You said a solitary superpower. Waldo in Midwest Texas checks in, has a few random thoughts before answering the question. Says, I've been watching the food reviews for years and have shared them with my siblings. And I recently started listening to the podcast on Spotify, find them relaxing and interesting. We all love your content and your polite and eloquent manner. You are a golden soul, my good sir. Recently, I bought a slim maroon 3-piece suit for a wedding. I paired it with a white shirt and a cream/gold tie. I know you like the half Windsor, not for the tie, but my buddy kept preaching double Windsor or nothing. This is my first suit as a grown adult of 28 years. Unfortunately, I fell ill with a virus, not COVID, but had to miss the wedding. Now I look forward to the day I get to wear it, although I think a black shirt would do better for my style. Anyway, enough with the chit-chat, and on to my submission for the latest podcast topic, because I believe I have an interesting idea. And first, before we get to that, I'm sorry that things, fell through with the wedding, and I know it's just how life is sometimes. We could plan out everything so well, and there are still variables that we just cannot account for, and things just, it happens as it does, right? You get all ready and everything, and then you get sick, and all those plans just get derailed. And I had to laugh at the insistence of your friend, double Windsor or nothing. Yeah, I mean, that's his approach, and he that's his philosophy. That's what he abides by. For me, I go with the half Windsor. I just think that works best with the type of the style that I prefer. But there's different tie knots that that work. I remember there was back in like the 2010s. This is maybe if you go back to, I don't know, maybe it was like there was a span of time, perhaps from maybe like 2009 to maybe 2015, or 16 at the latest, but then I know that it did pop up here and there on social media that there was some sort of tie knot that was really being promoted, and it was like, I never used it. I thought it was really gimmicky, but I remember there were a lot of young people at the time that would try to wear it that way. And what was the name of it? To me, it always looked like just like a backwards tie knot or something like that. Yeah, this has to be it. Like, it was like the Eldridge knot or something like that, where, yeah, it was meant to look like like the knot was reversed or something to that extent. I never could get myself to really get into that. I thought it was just sort of silly and gimmicky, and I didn't really see the appeal. I've, I guess, just been more of a traditionalist when it comes down to tie knots. But yeah, for like a time, for a couple years, that was like the cool knot that you saw a lot of young people trying to wear, especially for like a high school dance or a prom or something. They're always trying to wear the Eldridge knot, you know. And, but me, I've always just been the traditionalist, just the half Windsor or the 4-in hand, and that's pretty much been it for me. Some of these gimmicky knots, they just look, well, they just don't look good. That's all that I'll say. Some of these look horrible. Oh, gosh. They look like such a pain to learn, too. The only thing to remember, and I'll say this on a final note, only thing to remember as far as a double Windsor knot is just to keep in mind that the more complicated the knot ends up being, the bigger it's going to be. So if you do decide to go with the double Windsor knot, just understand that the size of the tie knot, it's going to be a bit larger and a little bit more on the bulky side. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a matter, if you like the way it looks, that's fine. But it could be a little troublesome if the collar of your shirt is a little smaller. It could be disproportionate and a bit tough. So it depends on what type of shirt you have. If you have one that has like a wider spread collar, then, you know, double Windsor knot will sort of fill that space nicely. Whereas if it's one that's more of a tighter, very straight and stiff collar, a double Windsor knot might just be a little tough. It might just get in the way of things, but I'd say just go with whatever works best. Anyway, to your superpower answer, you say, if I could have any superpower for 24 hours, I would have the power to refill or replenish anything. Allow me to elaborate. Let's say you go to your favorite fast food place and you get the perfect item and it's prepared just right. Now it's gone. Just refill the container, have another. Stipulations are it must be a sort of container that had something in it and is now empty or partially empty. It can be an open container or closed. We can get quite creative with it too. You had $20 in your wallet and take it out, refill it with another 20. This can be used, of course, for good or mischief. Let's say you really, really want to get back at someone, and they just used the restroom. Well, I'll let you extrapolate yourself. I feel like this is an endlessly useful power. All the things you could refill. Gas in your car, air in your lungs. Concluding here, I want to say thank you for everything you do. Keep at it, sir. See you around the waves and the webs. Thank you, Waldo from Texas, checking in. Oh, God, your thought at getting even there with the bathroom saga. And that would give a whole new meaning if you want to say someone's full of it, right? Oh, God. Oh, that's good. That's good. You got a laugh out of me with that. Thanks for writing in. This listener from England writes, hope you're enjoying your day. My superpower for the day would be regeneration. I believe this is the power of Deadpool. I have a lot of injuries currently. Recurring tendonitis in my arm and a dry socket in my jaw that's left the nerve exposed for almost 6 weeks now. I believe regeneration would allow me to fix these issues and that the benefits would sustain even when the power is lost. Interjecting, very true. Absolutely. As an aside, you write, I was recently introduced to the online wideband SDR receivers by a university tutor, and I was wondering as to your thoughts on the quality of the signal and if there are any benefits or negatives compared to home transceivers. Thanks for your time, listener there from England. So thank you for writing in. I'm really sorry that you're going through dealing with these injuries. It sounds horrible, and I wish it weren't so. And absolutely, the power of regeneration there would definitely allow things to get better on your end, and hopefully stay better, too. So I think that's a good choice, a very personally helpful one at that. And, the web SDR receivers, they're hit or miss. I think they are very useful, though. I think they could be a good, precursor in some ways to getting a radio, but at the same time, a web SDR is not a full replacement for a radio, and I'll see some people say that, but you have to understand, this is where I sort of differ with that opinion. I think if you're interested in shortwave and radio in general, I think if you really want to get into it, be familiar with web SDRs, but also have a physical radio as well. Now, some people might say, well, why? Doesn't that sound a bit redundant, right? Why have one when you can just have the other? Well, look at the name, Web SDR. It's reliant solely upon the internet. So if you're using that as your radio, if a circumstance comes about where the internet is gone, and that could be anything, right? That could simply be due to severe weather, could be due to a natural disaster, could be due to conflict, government censorship, could be massive cyber attacks, could even be financial circumstances, or anything in between, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and your internet access is gone or limited, or if it's really, really slow, or, the costs for data become obscene. Having a physical radio circumvents all of that. And likewise, if you still use an SDR, if you're concerned about privacy, you still theoretically could be tracked, and, it could be recorded what you're listening to and where you are, etc., etc. If you have an actual radio set, that eliminates every single one of those concerns. So my recommendation is, if you find them interesting, get a physical radio as well. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like I said, I always recommend a lot of these portable Texon radios, and those do the job perfectly fine. And enjoy the web SDRs as well, and have both. That's how I do a lot of my listening. I have the web SDRs, but I also have my own radio, and the web SDRs can be fun. They absolutely can be, because I can, open them up and listen to different locations from around the world. A lot of the web SDRs that I like using are the few that are in more exotic locations where shortwave, is still more relevant. But the thing you have to understand also about a web SDR, they are still just as susceptible to interference as a regular radio is. And there are lots of these online SDR receivers out there that I don't even understand why they're even up and running, because all that they ever pick up is static. And there's so much static and interference that it's like, why is this even hosted when it's completely and totally useless in every single way? And I would say at least over half, if not more, of these online SDR receivers out there are like this. They're utterly useless. So, yeah, a lot of them are just total garbage. But then you get a few, and I have my favorites. Like, let's say there might be 300 of these around worldwide. I have maybe like a dozen of them that are my go-to ones. And, this dozen are the ones that I personally find to have the best, either the best reception, where they have a really good antenna, and a very low noise floor, i.e. there's not much static or interference, nothing getting in the way of any of the signals. And either that, or even if they have some interference and static, they're in a location that allows me to hear stations where before I'd never the opportunity. So a good example is there's one that popped up a couple weeks ago in Lima, Peru. It is the only SDR even in that part of the world. There's no others in Peru, there's none in Bolivia, none in anywhere in western Brazil, none in Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, none. There's nothing in that area except for this one in Lima, Peru. And, I get it set up. There's static, there's interference, but I could check out some of the frequency ranges, and I'm able to pick up a variety of stations that, with pretty clear reception that I can barely hear even in Florida with a good 50, 60-foot long wire antenna and my Texone radio. For instance, I have it up right now. And this one in Lima, Peru, the frequency of 4775 kilohertz. There's a station there called Radio Tarma, which is a commercial station. It's in Spanish, and its power is only maybe 1 kilowatt. It's a station, it's still for very, it's for serious listeners, non-hobbyist listeners, in rural Peru that still depend on the shortwave, and it just provides them news, music, entertainment. These are for the folks that still don't have any internet or anything. At best, I can hear the signal, really weak and fluttery in the middle of the night, yet here on this receiver in Lima, Peru, the signal is coming in very strong, as a matter of fact, because this is in, the target area. It's an opportunity to hear this station with clarity that I never can. I go to the frequency of 4810 kilohertz, the station there, Radio Logos. It's 1 kilowatt as well. It's really in the middle of nowhere. I've seen pictures of it. It's in a small building, literally in the jungle. And that station, the best I could ever get is just a trace of it. Again, that's for listeners really in the real remote areas, in the rainforest down there. That one, again, even in Lima, Peru, it's not that strong, but you could actually listen to it. 4820 kilohertz, another station that's pretty strong that, again, I can never really hear. 4955 kilohertz is another example. 5035 kilohertz, another station. 3310 kilohertz. All these real low-power South American stations that the opportunity to hear them directly is, impossible. Being able to hear them on this receiver in Lima, Peru gives me that opportunity. Now, some people will say, well, why not just listen to them streaming online? Yeah, I get it, but I just like being able to listen to them still in the analog quality with the static and the fading and, I don't know, hearing them, the appeal just isn't the same, hearing them with a pristine online quality. And I think for those of you that are really into shortwave, I think you understand. It's one of those things not everyone really gets, but if you get it, you get it. Daniel writes, hey, Review Bra, I would die for 24 hours and then resurrect. That would be my superpower. I could learn and pass on to others what, if anything, happens after death. Hey, and maybe even meet the big guy. Fingers crossed. Cheers, love your work, take care. So Daniel checks in. That's a unique one right there. To be able to pass away, again, for a 24-hour period. So this would far exceed, of course, any near-death experience. And, then get to the other side, see what's there, what you take from it, come back, and report with your findings. It would be a tough situation, I think. You would have a lot of people that would be skeptical, but you would obviously believe convincingly in your heart, obviously, that what you saw, whatever it might be, for better or for worse, is the real deal. That would certainly be fascinating, and thank you for checking in. Another listener in Las Vegas, Nevada, Mike, checks in, says, if I could have one superpower for 24 hours, I would choose super speed, so I could get all of my errands done in seconds, so I don't have to be out long in the Vegas heat. So Mike checks in, and it's an understandable one. It could be very practical as well, and yeah, certainly that's one way to beat the heat. Super speed, just in and out real quick, everything's done, and then you could get everything taken care of just like that. Jordan in Glasgow, Scotland says, I've been a long time watcher and listener of the YouTube channel and podcast. I love all your work and how honest and open you are. I know you've said before you prefer doing the radio show more than the podcast, and I just had a question about the YouTube channel. What kinds of videos do you prefer doing for yourself? Not about the views or likes, just that you enjoy the most. Out of the food reviews, energy drink reviews, days in the life, or the ones like reacting to mean comments. Such as how do I feel about being a meme, why do people call you review bra, and videos as such. I love the latter, more miscellaneous videos, and they're my go-to. Love watching the older videos of you reacting to things about yourself. All the best from Jordan. So it's an interesting question. Jordan in Glasgow, Scotland writes in. And yeah, an understandable question about the YouTube channel. What sorts of videos do I personally enjoy doing the most? You see, every video comes with its benefits and its drawbacks. You see, that's the thing. The random videos have their drawbacks in so much that the subsequent editing process is, in many cases, quite annoying and very time-consuming, whereas the regular reviews, I'm sure as pretty much all of you can tell, I try to film them in one take, upload them as is. I literally upload them straight from the camera, like it used to be back in the 2000s. I upload it straight from the camera, direct to YouTube, and I let that be that. But obviously, the drawback is that so much of the food that I have to eat nowadays is poison, and I don't care what people think. It's literal poison. This stuff will kill you, and it gets worse and worse. Half this stuff I hate eating because it's disgusting, and it's just vile. And the amount of times this slop just goes right into the garbage immediately afterward is more than I can count. Most of the time now it goes right into the garbage. I don't trust it. I would have a legitimate concern most of the time that I'll get sick from eating this crap. But it's how I have a roof over my head, so I deal with it. And I try to say, well, maybe if I eat, just a little bit, I won't get sick this time. And sometimes that approach works, but this stuff is just the most bottom-of-the-barrel, vile slop you can imagine many a time. But I try to tell myself, it's a couple bites, and if I could sort of put out a warning to tell other people not to eat this stuff, I certainly will. And it's really a shame that the quality of the food has gone downhill so far in the last couple years. And I know people make the comparison, and I think it's an understandable one, from, the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s to present. Absolutely. But I think what ended up happening was you had a decrease from good food to mediocre food during that time. Let's say from, again, the 80s, to even 2000s, up until maybe 2020. But then there was another decline from 2020 to present that went from mediocre food to practically inedible slop. And that's the stage you're at now, where so much of this stuff is just... It's just disgusting. So that's the downside of doing the reviews. They're easier to film. They're easier on me as far as just the endurance aspect of it goes. But the consequence, of course, is, again, just, you have to shovel this garbage in your mouth and hope for the best. And it is what it is, I do get sick a lot, and it's because of this stuff that I have to eat for the camera. So the reviews have their downsides, but they have their benefit as well. I don't know. I guess the reviews, because that's all that I really do nowadays. But that's a good question. I don't really have an answer for you there. Back to our superpower question. Michaela writes in, my answer to this is one that will probably be popular. Teleportation, to be able to go anywhere in the world at any time in an instant for free. I think it would change my life in a positive way. The other answer I briefly considered would be the power of persuasion. This obviously comes with moral implications and the issue of abusing someone's free will. So ultimately, I don't think I would want that ability. And then I thought, well, I could just use it on my cat, get her to sit still while I clip her nails, but even then, it opens up a can of worms about who has free will, when it's okay to abuse someone or something's free will, etc. Love the show. All the best from Michaela. Michaela, thank you for checking in. Yeah, the teleportation, I think that's a pretty safe answer, provided you've clearly thought out, where it is you would like to visit, and make sure you have the return trip calculated out and everything. But the power of persuasion, I could easily see, that could create, in some cases, a moral dilemma, like you mentioned. And then, right, it depends on what you would want to be using it on or for, and if you think it's worth it or not, or how you feel about it. And again, people will see it differently, You'll get some people that'll say, look, the world's bad enough as it is, what do I care if, I do this, that, or the other thing. And, then you'll get other folks that will think a bit more into it, like in your case, even so much as using the power just to keep your cat to sit still, might give you some pause, perhaps. Interesting answer, Michaela. Thank you for sharing that. Interesting thoughts and perspective there. Loretta writes, I would choose the ability to be able to fly. Mainly, that would really be something to do without wings, considering especially how just about anything in the natural world, to include prehistoric animals that flies, has wings of some kind in order to do so. I wonder then how this superpower works. Would I just have to mentally conjure flying and off I'd go? Would I have to take a running jump like Superman does? And what would propel me through the air once I became aloft? And then you asked, what would I do with that superpower for 24 hours? Well, once I figured out how to get going, I would just like to fly away somewhere tranquil, as I'm stuck in a city currently. I love driving, but being able to fly somewhere without all the hassles of an airport would be really nice. Loretta checking in. The ability to fly. I would wager that's probably a popular answer. And as for the other questions as to the how, we'll just say magic. That's the lazy answer that takes care of everything. It's just magic, It'll just work. Don't even think about it, right? Yeah, the ability to fly, though, I could see that. The one thing, and here I am, I'm the person that made up this question, and here I am, even uncertain as to the technicalities, but I wanted to keep it very vague and broad, just, to have some fun and interesting answers that would come in, which is exactly what we've achieved, and I'm very happy about that, but, it's amusing to think about, and I don't even know if this is talked about, because it's funny, I asked the question about superpowers, when you would think, insofar as asking such a question is concerned, oh, so you must therefore be familiar, and perhaps even a fan of, various superhero movies and the associated tropes and abilities, etc., but I'm really not. I just sort of asked that question because I thought it would be interesting, but, I'm not very familiar with all the lore and details and all of that, and what's considered canon, if there even is such a thing when it comes to this stuff. But, it does have me wondering, like, the superheroes, in any context, that have the ability to fly, do they even, or is it even mentioned, I should say, how they're able to deal with, like, the external factors? So, for instance, even if I'm in Florida, and let's say it's, 90-something degrees at sea level, if I decided to fly, and I even got to an altitude several thousand feet in the air, I would already start feeling much cooler, and then obviously the higher I get, the colder the temperature will be. Is it ever even mentioned, like, do these superheroes, does that bother them? What about flying at a certain speed? Does the wind and the cold air, does that bother them? Does that get into their eyes? Or could they just deflect that? Or do they not even, does that have no impact? Or what if they fly through a cloud? Then they'll get covered in all of the water droplets and the condensation and everything. And what if they fly into a cloud of insects or something? It's like, you never really hear about any of this stuff, so I guess it just sort of, I guess it has no effect, or maybe they just don't care. But it's one of those things, I feel like it's never really mentioned. And I don't know if there's any sorts of rules, spoken or otherwise, that would cover for any of that. Oh gosh, that's funny. Thank you for writing again. We hear next from Aravik, who writes, I would choose the power of healing injuries, not only physical ones, but emotional ones as well. Although that's a tall order, and I can barely get through my own ones, but if I could help in some way, I would do it if I could. Brad in Illinois sends in the next response. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I would want the ability to instantly astral project to anywhere in the universe just by thinking about it, while my body would remain safe in my home, and I could not touch or physically interact with anything while projecting, but I could see anything, remember everything, and be seen and heard. Think of something similar to Luke Skywalker in the last Star Wars movie, where he projects out of isolation to distract Kylo Ren. This would also provide the benefit of being safe and sound at home when the 24 hours is up. While it would be tempting to want to visit some secret location like Area 51 and see what's really out there, or try to find out some of the secrets, or Bigfoot or the Illuminati, I would much rather jump to every known, potentially habitable exoplanet and see there what it looks like. If there truly is other life out there, are we alone? And with that power, you could jump to hundreds of places across thousands of worlds, looking for anything that is not dirt and rock. Even a single plant growing would be proof that the life-causing sparks didn't just happen here. Thanks for reading, and thank you for your show, Brad from Illinois. That's a fascinating response right there. To be able to utilize the power, as you said, of astral projection, be able to traverse, the universe in that instantaneous manner, and essentially do your own form of SETI research in the most literal sense, and just sort of quickly hop from exoplanet to exoplanet, do a quick survey, see what it's like, and then, move on to the next. And essentially try to discern, because granted, and, this is one thing about exoplanets that I will research this in my free time because I think it's fascinating, and I have personal interest in the matter. But it's one of those things that I think to the casual observer it might not be as clear that our ability to study exoplanets, while it's gotten better, I don't know if it's as good as what some people think. And here's what I mean. I would wager, anyway, that there's a percentage of individuals out there, a considerable percentage, that is, when you read about or hear about one exoplanet or another, let's say in the news, in some scientific article, and there's usually one of these that's up pretty much at any point. Like, I'm just going to Google it right now, and I bet something's going to come up in the news. Exoplanet, right? What are people saying about them right now? Let's check the news. You'll see stories like this, One day ago, astronomers spot Death Wish planet that's slowly killing itself. Ooh. And then this is another one. It has to be the same one. Alien world discovered provoking its own hellish apocalypse. And, you could click on these articles. And what else do we have? A James Webb Telescope discovers its first exoplanet. Okay, you click on that. Astronomers confirm, this is from 2 weeks ago, astronomers confirm new gas giant exoplanet with help from citizen scientists worldwide. You get to that. And so on and so forth. Every other week there's a new story coming out about one exoplanet or another that's being discovered. Here's the thing. When you look at these, and you essentially click on each of these stories, you see a picture of the supposed planet. And I think a lot of people think these are actual pictures of said planet. Now, I must concede the James Webb Space Telescope is a brilliant piece of machinery, and it's an incredible tool for scientific research and astronomy, and it's able to look into the real depths of the universe and, make certain captures that, yes, are mind-blowing in their resolution. But people will think, well, just because we can get, good pictures of the planets in our solar system through our telescopes. A lot of people also forget that a lot of the best images of the planets in our solar system come from the various probes we've sent out, on various missions over the years. The real close-up, high-resolution images, People forget that too. But, people will think, oh, well, just because we can get these images of the planets in our own solar system means that we can capture images of exoplanets just as clearly. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Most exoplanets, you can't even really directly image them. And the ones that have been directly imaged, you know what they look like? They look like a blob of maybe 3 pixels, and that's it. Everything that you see in these pictures of the exoplanets are artists' interpretations of what people think they might look like. Now, I think to a lot of people this is sort of obvious, but, in other cases, I think people just look at the headlines, they see the image, and while it provides a nice visual, we don't actually know that the planet looks anything like that. It's just, exotic imagery to make the article a little more interesting, and I have no objection to it, but I think some people think that we have this ability, that we can just see these exoplanets with that clearly, that high resolution, but in reality, the best we can do, as far as imaging is concerned, is get a few pixels, something that looks like a blob, And this is in very rare circumstances, and you'll think, okay, there it is, but that's about all we could really tell at this point. There's no chance you could make out any of the surface features, and there's really no telescope we could ever make feasibly that would be able to have that ability. It's beyond our means. The way that a lot of these exoplanets then are sort of studied is through, when they transit and they pass in front of the host star, right, of that planetary system in question, wherever or whatever it might be. They're able to analyze, and this is very simplifying it, greatly simplifying it, they're able to analyze the way the light sort of passes through it, and then they're able to try to study that and determine then the chemical breakdown and chemical composition of the atmosphere of said planet, and make other calculations, distance, etc., and try to make various determinations. But even then, a lot of that can be guesswork, and those results are up for debate. So, while we can detect exoplanets and we could garner a certain amount of data and information, right, from them and about them, this is a study that's still in its infancy, but it is getting better over the years. I mean, it's something even just a couple decades ago, you couldn't detect a single exoplanet, and now we've detected thousands and thousands of them, and that number is obviously only going to go up. And then getting back now to your question, or not really a question, your answer, sort of ties into the Fermi paradox, right? Where it's like, okay, we see all these stars, we see all these galaxies, now we see all these exoplanets, but where's all the life? And like I said, there's only so much we could necessarily glean, but even still, we're not hearing even just any weak little traces of detectable radio transmissions, or really nothing that's sort of signaling signs of intelligent, let alone hyper-intelligent, super-advanced civilizations. So then it begs, of course, the famous question, well, there's all this stuff, where is everyone? And there's no real good answer for it. And obviously, if you had that ability to do that astral projection and sort of just be able to go there to as many as you could and essentially see, you might be able to answer that question, or at least get some sort of real data, that, again, you would at least know. I think the results could go many different ways. I think there could be instances where every planet is just going to be barren and devoid of any life, which will then, it'll make you think. There might be instances where maybe there are signs of maybe plant life, a very exotic plant life, maybe some wild creatures of sorts, maybe not. What if there's a chance, you come across some sort of alien city? It'd be incredible. And then you think, well, how haven't they been detected, though? Or what if you come across the desolate ruins of a civilization that once was, but is no longer? That's possible, too. When it comes down to the Fermi paradox and life in the universe, I'm sort of split. I don't necessarily think life is commonplace. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's only confined here on Earth. But one thing that does make me think is maybe life in and of itself is rare. Maybe intelligent life is even rarer. Because if you factor in the geologic record and everything of Earth, all that, how many years we've gone back now that life in some form has existed on this planet, and just within the last 200 years or so, you've started getting somewhat modern technology after all this time. How long that's been. Now there's just this tiny, minuscule little gap where you finally have a species that at least has some form of technology after all this time that this planet has had life. it's taken that long, and we're in this tiny little blip in the grand scheme of things, where there's now a species here, i.e. humans, that have any sort of technology, be that electricity, radio, a space program, telescopes, space telescopes, etc. But you factor in how long life has existed here relative to where we are now, and how long that took. It could be, therefore, that what if it's just intelligent life, and that's giving us more credit than perhaps we deserve, even if you want to consider, it's like, what if that's extremely rare, let alone aliens as we think of them being, leagues more advanced than we could ever be, with that being even rarer still. And what if that's a possible solution to the Fermi paradox, and some of these planets that maybe look like they're potentially habitable? Well, maybe they are, but maybe it's just that the aliens on such planets aren't all that better off than a lot of the animals you see here on Earth, that they certainly aren't going to have any sort of alien technology or alien radio transmitters or alien spacecraft or anything. They're just alien wild animals doing alien wild animals things out there, foraging and grazing and running around and hurling themselves off cliffs and getting eaten by other alien animals. And maybe they're not the brightest things in the universe either, and that's the bulk of alien life out there. And I think that'd be fascinating in some cases, but disappointing in others, because everyone thinks of alien life as just being so much more advanced, almost to like a godlike position relative to our technology, and then it turns out actually, sorry, it's not really that way. Most of the aliens are actually kind of like a lot of the wild animals you see here on Earth, and maybe those hyper-intelligent alien species, maybe there's like one existing, civilization like that, maybe per galaxy at any given time, and that's it. And that might even be generous. I mean, there have been some prospects that alien life of any form, simple or complex, might even just be relegated to just, 2 or 3 planetary systems in the whole galaxy at any given time, which would mean most of what you'd see out there is just devoid of any life, and you'll probably you'd never come across anything, no matter how far you look or how much you try to look. And you have all manner of points and counterpoints for these sorts of arguments. I could go on for another hour about this easily, but I want to get to other responses, so I'm going to leave it at that, because I think I've gone on a long enough tangent. This listener writes, "Here is my answer to your question, and to any listeners who have played the video game Life is Strange, you'll probably know where this is going. I wonder what it would be like to have the ability to reverse time and space. Sounds crazy enough, right? There would be, however, a catch to this power. While I can still reverse time itself, I would only be able to go back so far. For the sake of example, let's say you're driving somewhere and somehow end up in a terrible automobile accident. If you used your powers in time, no pun intended, you could get back far enough to just minutes before the accident. That way you could be on the lookout for warning signs, so you could basically avoid death and tell Mr. Grim Reaper to suck it in the process. Anyway, just thought I'd contribute to the program. Hope you're having an awesome summer so far. Thank you. Interesting submission there. We hear next from Isidro, who says, "Just finished listening to the latest podcast while at the lab and had a good laugh when you said Twist and Shout and Rocking Chair were identical. Luckily, I didn't take the time to listen to those songs." every time you say something about actively listening to the show and not sleeping to the show, I always get a laugh, because it makes believe I was sleeping or on autopilot, and I became aware of what I'm doing. That, or I forget people use this show to sleep. Yeah, it is funny interjecting, Isidro, that, granted, I still to this day don't understand how or why people use this as a sleep aid. But granted, in my case, it's just because, I do the show, and, I have to sit here for hours recording and then editing the program. And I think to myself, because I have to, well, after I edit everything, I always do with these programs what I like to call a final review, where I just listen to the entire show. I do a full playthrough from front to back, and I listen to the whole thing before I make it public, just to make sure there aren't any issues or errors that I had missed the first time around. And I gotta tell you, like I said, I see it differently, I'm sure, than how other people do, but I gotta tell you, that is one of the most tedious things that I could do. Granted, that's a huge overstatement, I'm sure, but it is a tedious process. I hate it. And I think to myself, my God, how can anyone sleep to this? It's bewildering. It's a mystery to me. But like I said, I'm the one that does the show, so my perspective is granted different. Back to your email. In response to the question about superpowers for a day, I have 3 answers. I would like Spider-Man's powers, mainly for my inner child. Telekinesis, so I can be lazy and float things to my hand, or learn to levitate myself and fly over obstacles or hard-to-reach places. My most thought-out answer is superintelligence in all fields and being able to multitask. With this, I would learn as much as I can in explored and unexplored fields, and to avoid forgetting, I would also upload videos, files of my blueprints, schematics, protocols, ideas, and how to materialize these concepts in a hard drive so it wouldn't be lost. I would then try to ethically commercialize some of these discoveries to prevent fraud and other things that could be used to hinder its progress. I am not that smart. In general, I would try to improve humankind, but I think it needs more than innovation and rather peaceful resolutions to conflicts. So if intelligence in political science, geopolitics, etc., to achieve peace is possible, I'd choose that, but I doubt it's a superpower unless that's what makes it super. Best regards, Miss Isidro. Isidro, it's great to hear from you, and I appreciate your thoughts there. It's fascinating, yeah, that superintelligence in geopolitics perhaps achieve some form of world peace. Very interesting. Thanks for writing in. I always like hearing from you. Chris in Ohio. I do have a wish. In the title's regard, I would love to be able to read people's minds, not so that I could take unfair advantage or for voyeuristic reasons, but because I've always been unusually interested in how people really think. What do your friends really think of you? Why did a politician actually vote yes or no on a bill, etc.? I suspect that what really causes opinions and attitudes is not what an external observer always suspects. For an obvious example, at the end of a hard shift, a smiling store clerk might really be wishing you'd drop dead. Perhaps the reason a friend is saying no about something is because of some deep-seated childhood trauma they want you to have no idea about. I think the superpower would be fascinating and give a mind-blowing picture of how the world subconsciously works. It might be truly dispiriting and depressing day by the end of it, to be honest. In all likelihood, I would probably turn out to be relieved quite highly when it is over. I also wanted to add your experiences with the YouTube algorithm of upsetting, if it causes you to reluctantly not do new how-to videos or reaction to videos. That sucks. I understand your stated reason, of course, but do you really make that choice? Chris in Ohio checks in. Chris, thank you for writing in. And interesting thoughts there. I could definitely see how that ability could lead to a very tedious experience, and one that you'd definitely be glad to finally put an end to once the day is through. I could definitely see that. Zach from Israel, reporting from Dublin, Ireland, checks in again, regular listener, says, first of all, thanks for reading my email in the previous show. I didn't realize how long it was until I heard you reading it on air, so my apologies for that. Interjecting, no worries, all's good. Regarding your question about having a superpower for 24 hours and how I'd use it, well, I'm quite shy and introverted, and because of that, I find it difficult to build meaningful relationships, let alone a romantic one. To be honest, I feel like this introverted side of me has only gotten stronger over the years. This is especially challenging now that I've relocated to a new country where building new connections is even harder. So, if I could use this superpower... I see what you're doing. Yeah, it's a good one, actually. If I could use this superpower for one day, I think I'd choose to become an extrovert with some kind of supercharged social confidence. With that kind of ability, I'd try to do the things I usually don't have the courage to do. Maybe even go to a party, which I'd normally avoid. More importantly, I'd try to use the day to meet a lot of people and hopefully build some real connections that could last beyond just those 24 hours. Who knows, maybe I'd even manage to start a romantic relationship. I'm sure there are plenty of other amazing superpowers, ones that could help others or improve society, but this was the first thing that came to mind, probably because it speaks to something I personally struggle with. Thanks again for all the great content. Again, Zach from Israel, reporting from Dublin. Thanks for checking in. It's an interesting one. I gotta say, it made me laugh, but I get it. It's like, yeah, when you don't really like dealing with people much, and I'm with you right there on that. And as for me, I don't even really go out anymore. And then it's like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just gonna be like a social butterfly for the day, and I'm just gonna be the life of the party. And see what comes of it. And like you said, because you never know, there could perhaps be instances wherein it's just about making that first move, opening up the metaphorical doorway there, and that ability would do just that. And then perhaps once that's the most difficult part. And then once that's all said and done and taken care of, after that day, then you could just take it from there. And, very interesting. Thanks, Zach. We hear from Jamie and Sarah from England, who say, I was so excited to hear about your question on the last podcast about what superpower I would have for a day if I could choose. One day is not a very long time to have a superpower, so I would want to make good use of it. By using it to improve my life, in that case, I would like a superpower of sensing gold. I could see through the earth and call it gold vision, and I'd go out for the day, and on my travels I would find and pilfer people's gold, whether it be in their houses or in the ground. And hopefully, by the end of the day, I would have enough to live on. Don't judge me for my selfish power, and I'm not laughing at you. I just find it amusing. Don't judge me for my selfish power, but if you do, I have an alternative power which is more selfless, the power of healing vision, which I believe would entail me looking at someone who is sick and then they would be healed. Now, of course, I would only look to someone to heal if they paid me in gold. So either way, I would have a lot of gold, but if not, at least I would help some people. Oh, you got me. You got me on that one. That's props to you. If the question was different and forever, I would choose flying or levitation. As this is only one day, I need to make the most of it. Lastly, I'd like to thank you for all that you do. Your show calms me and brightens my day. Wishing you all the best and good health and happiness. Me and my wife love your podcast, and I'm trying to actually convince her to make some fan art for you. Regards, Jamie and Sarah from England. Great to hear from you both. And, that response was really something. That twist, I have to say, that genuinely got a good laugh out of me. The gold vision, and then, the healing, but you still gotta pay. Hey, you want to be healed? Cough up those gold coins, and then maybe we'll get somewhere. Oh, that's great. Jamie and Sarah. I know you guys listen to the radio broadcasts, too, and I always appreciate your listenership to that as well. And I want to thank you for what I personally found to be a very entertaining response. And let's finish off this program with the response from, and I hope I get the name right. If I don't, understand there is no insult intended. It's just a mispronunciation. I believe the name is Vunch from Lucknow, India. Or it might be Vanch, but again, I apologize for any mispronunciations. I hope you've been keeping well, you write, and that things are sailing smoothly at your end. I've been a long-time listener of your podcast, as well as a consistent viewer of your YouTube videos. For the last 5 to 6 years. Long-time viewer there. As for your question, if I had to pick a superpower that would last me just a day, the ability to materialize any object that I could think of would be something I'd strongly consider. It would allow for me to have the material pleasures to go on with the rest of my life without any financial burden, while also enabling me to use my time for things I would rather do than to hustle for a good portion of my life just to earn a decent living. Now, going a bit off the topic, I just wanted to say I discovered your channel in the late 2010s, and your videos had a genuinely positive impact on me during those impressionable times. Most of the items you review aren't available in my country. I just watch the content because I found the way you carried yourself, as well as your general mannerisms, to be quite comforting, as well as something that I would have loved to incorporate into my own life, in my own way. Must have gone through 100 or so videos during the pandemic, and they were all a joy to watch. Just wanted to say that you truly are a joy to listen to, and the content you provide is enjoyed and appreciated. Thanks for the read. Well, thank you. And I really appreciate your kind words, and I'm glad that, regardless of applicability, that the videos provided something to watch and helped you through perhaps a difficult and stressful and confusing and overall scary time in the world. So it's great to hear from you, and I think that's a good ability, too, that you picked. So thank you for checking in. It's great to hear from you. Dear listeners, that concludes today's program of VORW International. Thank you all so much for listening in, and remember that the next program is a miscellaneous mailbag. Any questions, whatever they talk about, anything that you want. And make sure you email me, VORWINFO@gmail.com. That's the way to do it. I'll try to get the program out, hopefully at the end of August. We'll see. But that's what I hope for anyway. So send in an email send in an email through the month of August. And there's a good chance it'll make it on the show. So look forward to hearing from you if you have something to say. And I think we'll have a good enjoyable, miscellaneous program coming up next. Dear listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in. It is you, the listener, that makes this show what it is, and it would be absolutely nothing if it weren't for your support, your participation. Really means the world to me, and I just want to thank you all for your support. Whether you're a first-time or a long-time listener, you make this program what it is, and I am eternally grateful for that. Until we meet again, be safe, be healthy, and I wish you all the very best. Take care. This is VORW.